And actually, I'm a chemical engineer, so I don't need to team up with chemists. But we teamed up. I already work 17 years with civil engineers. So, and we started in TU Darmstadt. This is the Werkstoff im Bauwesen team. So it's an Institute of Construction Building Materials. The head is Professor Kunders, and I'm a team lead of leading the mineral binders group. And we started with geopolymers, so 7 years ago. And we focused mainly on special properties of geopolymers, like acid resistance. And we worked also with sewer, so we teamed up also with biotechnologists. But for this application, electrochemistry is also important for energy, electrical energy production. So this is we teamed up also with the CHEMA. So this is Dr. Markus Stockel. He is also a head of the sustainable electrochemistry. And there was another group also on the biotechnology. The work, this publication, you can see there are many authors, but it's a PhD thesis of Shifan Zhang. He will defend soon, I hope. He joined the SICA group. Now he's working in SICA. So that's why maybe it takes a bit of time, but you can see he really did amazing work. And so the outline of my talk, I will first do very rough introduction because especially I like the sessions yesterday on not only on the rules, but also how to mix it and all the workshop. I appreciate Ralph. He really did an amazing job. I learned a lot, and I will try to apply all the rules. It certainly helps me for the future applications. And also with Professor Davidovic, he had very nice ideas how we can also, because what he said is really true. This is just a start. So I hope we continue, and especially I would like to also do it in collaboration with you. And so I will talk about the raw materials, mixed designs, and then the results on conductive geopolymers for microbiological fuel cells. And this part of the talk, if I have time, I can also talk about it. But as I mentioned, it's for the wastewater treatments, so the acid resistance also might be important, and the leaching. And this is actually, I'm doing habilitation on this topic, also modeling of the durability. And then finally, some conclusions. So we heard a lot about this. Especially I would just mention that here we have actually a reversible reaction. So this is irreversible. So first we dissolve, depolymerize, what we heard. It's also called hydrolysis and alkalination, because the alkalis, they attack these oxygens which then can depolymerize. But later we have this polycondensation reaction. So we create oligomers in solutions, and later they polycondensate further, and we have the making of these micelles, geopolymers micelles, which are order of 10 to 20 nanometers, 20 nanometers of the micelles, which then they aggregate, and then they form nice porous structures, which can actually, we would like to tailor them to have different porosities. So, and this is also a reversible reaction, I should mention. So depending on the pH, it can go back and forth. So the raw materials, we already heard a lot about the raw materials. For the clay, metakaolin, so we are using this red clay, I could say. You can see it here. It's one of the ferro polysilate, and very interesting. It's also not so pure. It has, we did the XRD quantitative analysis by Topaz, and we found quite a lot of quartz. But roughly it has 52% of amorphous content, which we could say it's metakaolin in it. And depending on this is very important because then we can use the rules how to do this mixture, and we know how much silicate we should use, not to do too much silicate because then we have too much leaching. In our case, I think we didn't had any kind of this kind of products. We use, of course, potassium silicate because you already saw it from Werner. That actually a presentation that already the viscosity of the potassium silicates is more than order of magnitude lower, so it's much better for the workability. But of course, with the mobility could be also important, but I think this is not a good comparison because it's the same mass, but it's by molar, it means we put actually more natrium, so maybe this is then overshooting the water silicates, and that's why it could also explain this efflorescence. But another reason could be because the natrium is smaller, and then it can also easily leach out. There is another metakaolin. This is the pure metakaolin, but we didn't use it for the conductive geopolymers. I did it later for the leaching studies. So now the graphite. This is a German product we took, and they exfoliate already the graphite, so it has fine particle sizes. So this is the surface area. D50, the median is the 5 micrometer, but we have also particle sizes below 1 micrometer. And here I would say that in microbial fuel cells, they use graphite. But graphite, yeah, you also need to bind, to make the graphite rods or plates, you also need the binder. So they use different kinds of binders, maybe resins. But an idea here is to use geopolymer as a binder to make the electrode. So here we can see the plates in different scales. This is the 20 micrometer, then 10. And we can see at the 15 nanometer, we can see the plate structure of the graphite plates. So now the mix designs, we used so different percentages of volume fraction of graphite, and from 1 to 10, we used the water glass to metakaolin ratio 0.8. I think it's not maybe too high, but the philosophy was to follow the if you have 50% of the metakaolin reactive, and to get this 1 to 2 ratio, so that means roughly 0.8. But I think it's maybe still a bit overshooting, too much water glass. But we use it also, we added water, and the water was added to increase actually the porosity, because now we want to play with the porosity. And those are then we fixed the 10% volume of graphite, but we added water. This is for Portland cement. We did a reference study, but they really didn't perform well. So I will not describe them here. So now we can see the compressive strength results. Of course, the graphite reduces the strength. It has a very high surface area, and we mixed it. Actually, it should be mixed with water before adding because we don't want too much water glass to go in. Then there is no. Yeah, water glass should be available for the reaction with metakaolin. So I would recommend to pre-saturate maybe with water the graphite. And yeah, we can see that for 10%, the strength was up to maybe 15 megapascals, which is still, there is an optimum. How much? Because the electrical conductivity here is important. And of course, the strength will go down. So we are finding some kind of optimum. Here we can see the mercury intrusion porosimeter. This is interesting part because, as I mentioned to you, we should play with the porosity, and we can see this is for the geopolymer reference without graphite. It has around 30% volume porosity. Also, it's mostly small pore sizes compared to the Portland cement, which has much bigger capillary pores. And so these are really the small pore sizes. But then by adding graphite, we are shifting to the bit bigger pore sizes.
And more interestingly, when we add a bit of water, we are increasing the porosity and also a little bit shifting. So this is the agglomeration of particles, we could call it. So this is something that we could play because we know from the lectures that these geopolymer missiles, they are around 20 nanometers, roughly. So they agglomerate. So they form like a, it's called like a fractal structure. So we have, if they are connected, we could have like a fractal structures. And these fractal structures look differently for different porosities. So they connect differently. And then in between is then the graphite, which would then also be percolated. That means the connected. So by adjusting the porosity, the idea is to see how this would, to get the optimal structure of the porosity. Of course, this is just the idea, but we are working on this. And I will show you later how are we approaching this. But now let's see the results. So there is electrical conductivity, which we measured. It's a 4-probe measurement. And we can see here 4 electrodes. We also did it with steel electrodes, with meshes, and the different shapes. And for Portland cement, they didn't actually percolate so good. So the compatibility in cements to percolate the graphite is not, it's much, much, much worse than for geopolymers. So with geopolymers, they really match with graphite. And we can see that the conductivity is by far 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude higher.
So, insisting the fact that you have here minus low is practically 0.
Yes, it's practically 0, yes.
Compared to what would happen in geopolymer. The 0 is underneath, yeah, okay?
Yes, and here we have
difference.
Exactly. So yeah, this is practically not conductive, and I would also mention that this conductivity is actually mainly probably from the ionic conductivity. And here we can see, because when we compare with the dry and the saturated, and here you can see that there is some certain percolation threshold or the conductivity threshold when the graphite starts to be connected, and when it's connected, it can flow the current. The current can flow through the connected particles of the graphite. So above some 7%, it's working. It starts to percolate. And interestingly, actually for the dry, so this is for the saturated, water saturated, or with the pore solution. Those are the values. But interestingly, when we dried the material, we got even higher increase in the electrical conductivity, which we explained by this sketch. So because the graphite particles are in the porosity, but when we dry it, then they start to form more of this percolated, connected. They make like a network, connecting network of the graphite particles. So here the porosity is really a key to tune, to tailor this kind of applications. Yeah. Here now about the electrochemistry. So this is how the microbial fuel cells look like. So we have the anode, which is we have the oxidation of the organics. So this is from the wastewater. We took Geobacter, sulfur reductant, and this is the anode. So this is here we have our geopolymer anode with graphite. Then we have the membrane, which is only passing the water, which is actually also cleaning the water. So this is also one benefit of these microbial fuel cells. And because we have oxidation here, then the electrons close the circuit. We have the electricity production. They are collected here, but we also need to have the ion. So the H plus goes in this direction. If the electrons goes here, also the ions should close the circuit, electrical circuit. And and on the cathode, we have then the reduction of the oxygen. And depending on the type of the, if it's a gas diffusion, we could even have the reduction to water or reduction to water peroxide. In our case, it was mostly water. So this is how our fuel cell looked like. So the geopolymer working electrode is here. We just use the clamping system to, our disk is inside, and we have the membrane is here, counter electrode is here. So, and we have the reference electrode, which is placed here on in 50 millimeters spacing from our geopolymer anode. So this is the multi-setup in the CHEMA, how they did it. So it's steering plates for the magnetic steerer, so that we have the steering of the wastewater. And we can see after electrochemical impedance spectroscopy and current production, we can see that for Portland cement, the resistance was very high, just for the reference. For geopolymer was already an order of magnitude lower because of the higher ionic strength. And, but when we added graphite, we can see that for Portland, it's still quite resistant to electricity. But for geopolymers, we are really reducing the resistivity. And at the end, we get the same resistivity for these kind of mixtures with water, same resistivity as for graphite, reference graphite. Here we can see also the current production. And again, with increase in carbon content, we are increasing the current production. And by adding also some water, that means increasing the porosity, which is actually also increasing the volume fraction of the carbon in the solid part. So the 10%, it's 10% of the total, but if we add water, the graphite is in the solid part, so actually it has more graphite in the solid part. So this is how we explain also the increase in electrical conductivity and also current production. And we are approaching really the reference graphite anode. So here we can see some powers. We could not directly, but that's also the question we had from the audience. But the power is usually for these microbial fuel cells is half watt per square meter. Here, those are the measurements of current densities. And we can see for different amount of carbon that during time it's quite stable. This is for the reference graphite. Here it goes down because the bacteria are lacking food. But here we added food, so we could. This is a batch experiment, but of course in reality it's a continuous flow. So, and here you can see when we added food, it stabilizes. So this is the power, the current density around up to 0.4 roughly. And we can see that we reach quite approaching the performance of the graphite reference. For Portland cements, it's really almost nothing, almost zero, 0.005. So now we took images, some images to see how this graphite percolates. And you can see for, this is without graphite. And then we identify the graphite particles because of the edge shape and also the plate structure. And hope you can see them here. But then by increasing the percentage of the volume of the graphite, you can see more and more of them, and they start to be connected. And this is the mechanism for electricity, how they conduct the electricity. So this is for 10%, but as I told you, when we add water, we are actually increasing the volume fraction in the solid part. And this is how we also explain the better conductivity when we add water. Now we also did some chemical analysis by microscopy, so EDS mapping, and you can see those black by backscatter. This is the backscatter image, so the black is the carbon, and we also identified here by carbon. You can see that it's very, so it's this yellowish color, and it's very well dispersed. And yeah, by silicium and aluminum, we can see the metakaolin particles, but also there is a quartz. For example, this is a quartz particle. So this is because we are using that ferro-silate siloxo metakaolin, the red clay. And here we can see the results of the biofilm. So because we have the formation of the biofilm, so also biofilm affinity is important here. For Portland cement was the worst. For graphite, of course, it has a very good biofilm affinity. And here we can see that also we have biofilm affinity in our geopolymer anode. So this is just the surface of the anode. So now to conclude this part on the geopolymer microbial fuel cells, actually it's the anode, how to make the conductive anode from the geopolymer, and we can see that we have a very good electrical conductivity, but for that we need the percolation of graphite, which we achieved for geopolymers, and was not possible to achieve it for Portland cement systems. And 7 to 8% was the percolation threshold when this graphite starts to percolate. So this is a good percentage for good conductivity. And I would say that the ion conductivity has only minor contribution. So mostly it's from the conductivity through the graphite, which we also proved by drying the material. And interestingly, by drying, we actually increased very much the conductivity, which we explained by the porosity, effect of the porosity, but I'm not excluding also maybe some chemical effects, because we are also, there is more interaction, more reaction of the geopolymer for sure when we dry, and probably there is some interaction between geopolymers and graphite, and they could also interact differently by high temperature. So this we also need to study more, but it's very interesting what we observed that with higher temperature we get better properties, even mechanical. And then next conclusion. We also got better current densities for when we increase the graphite content, and also the porosity, which is also important. But the porosity is important for the biofilm, because the bacterials, we need a bigger surface area, accessible surface area, and the biofilm, the bacteria can better interact with the graphite if we have a porous material. So this is the idea, and this is how we also explain better current density. So it's not only the conductivity, it's also the availability or the surface area of the accessible surface area of the anode. Yeah, the porosity, this is I think the key, how to tailor the porosity. I hope we have ideas how to go in this direction. And I would just mention why do we need these low-cost electrodes. So this is really key to increase the feasibility of these microbial fuel cells for the large-scale applications, because the current electrodes, they are very expensive, especially if they start to tailor the porosities. They get very expensive, and this could be the solution to produce cheaper electrodes. So the alternative to porous carbon binders. And this is ongoing research. So we have two researchers, PhD student and Lila. She is also here. She will present after lunch in the session. and she's working with carbon nanotubes. So she's a nanomaterials specialist, more on the experimental side, but we also have, we are working on the computational chemistry. So we are working on upscaling models, how to simulate these micelles and their aggregation. And for that, we have Mohamed Reza. He's a postdoc. He's doing on density functional theory calculations, and we are then upscaling this with kinetic Monte Carlo models. And I think this is the approach how to tailor the porosity effects. And of course, here we are also investigating the chemistry interactions between the geopolymers and carbon materials.
So you should understand, I understand this system as being an addition or coating to existing structures. You have the structures, you have pipes, sewing pipes, and you can coat inside the sewing pipes this geopolymer graphite composite, so that you will have kilometers of possible anodes at your disposal. The drawback of the MCF, of the microbial fuel cells, is that the current that is produced is relatively low, so we need big surfaces. And this provides the big surface. The combustible are the wastewater, the sewage with the bacteria. But the fact is that it can be applied on a huge scale, locally.